So this is what we're going to do. Okay. Now it's suggesting, following our high level comment at the top, it's following that recipe. It's saying, okay, let's go ahead and create an empty list, right? How do we do that? Well, it's suggesting this code. Let us take a look at it. So it's using the malloc function to create one of these structures of type list. So it is allocating at this point enough space to hold one of these structures. What does the structure contain? Well, it contains these three things now: an int star values, an int length, and an int capacity. This list, this variable lowercase l list, is a pointer to that allocated structure. Notice that the AI generated code has not used our explicit typecast, so I'm going to improve it by writing list star malloc. It's a pointer to a list, and I'm going to write an if condition here. What if that list was null? Well, the AI quickly realizes that it forgot to do that, so it's going to write this code. If list is null, then I'm going to return null. So now I have to remember that my empty list function, which returns a list star, might return null if it was unable to create a list. Okay? Now this syntax is something that we haven't seen. Since list is a pointer to a struct, this syntax is saying follow that pointer, that will take you to a struct, and now give me the values field of that struct. That values field is an is of type int star. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and initialize that array initially to hold one integer. Okay, so that's the initial capacity. Okay, what if that malloc fails? That was a request to the operating system. That could fail. So while I'm talking, my AI has suggested that that's probably a good thing to keep in mind. So if that values is null, then we will free up the list that we allocated. Remember, the list was already allocated at this point. So if the array allocation failed, we'll free up the list, and again we will return null. We are unable to create even a list of length 1. But otherwise, if we are able to reach here, then we were able to create the list. Within that list, we were able to create an array of size 1. And so now we can initialize its current length to 0 and its capacity to 1 and go ahead and return this list. Now, what about the length function, right? So len of a given list, well, we just return list arrow length. What if list was null? What should we return there, right? So we might want to deal with that case, or here in this case I'm just going to assume that list is not null. So this len function will not work if you give it a null list. If you didn't like this assumption, if your client said no, you really should handle that, then you might want to write code like this. If list is null, return some illegal length like -1. So in C, you must make a decision what to do because you have to return an integer, right? So in this case, I'm going to actually prefer my previous assumption. I'm just going to assume that this function is not actually called on null. If it is called on null, it turns out I will get a runtime error, because if list is null, then doing null arrow length will actually cause an error. Okay. Now, what else do we have? We have to return the value at a given index. And here we have to be a little bit careful. How is this function going to be created? Clearly, this function is going to take at least one argument, which is the index. And then it is going to return the value at that index. So hopefully, this should look like a function that takes an int argument and it returns an int, which is the value at that index. What if that index is illegal? Well, maybe just like with Python, this code will crash. So let's see what the AI suggests here. So it is actually taking two arguments. It has to take the list and the index, right? And again, it is assuming that the list is not null, right? Here is how it's going to try and handle negative indexing. If the index is negative, then it is going to simply add its length to the index. Go back and test your understanding of negative indexing in Python, and you will find that this logic is what Python uses, right? Here it is checking if the index is illegal. And if it is illegal, it is making an assumption here that I wish to return -1. That is not a good assumption, because the list that I had might itself contain a legal value -1. So this assumption I don't like.